Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Truckers Podcast, FYI. I'm your host, Doug from Ontario, Canada. It is 8:23 a.m. here on the 9th of April, Easter Sunday. Welcome to the show. Bill 16, Gender Identity. Thank you for joining me. Well, good morning, everybody, and happy Easter to everybody around the world. It is Sunday, the 9th of April. We have clear blue skies out there here in southern Ontario, Canada. It's going to be a mild afternoon as we get into the low teens in temperature, which is finally happening, from the cold we've had in the last couple of weeks and all the rain that we've had. And that, so if you're out visiting family today, having dinner, be safe out there. So I just wanted to go back, yesterday's discussion when it comes to Bill C-16 and its gender identity, gender pronouns. And you may or may not know what gender pronouns are, or where to use them, or when to use them, or how to use them. Something that, I certainly have recently learned about them. Never heard of them before. Not until, like I said yesterday, it's like, it's just perusing YouTube and, a video pops up. And thought, okay, what's this? And then learning that it's been put into law. So what are gender neutral pronouns? So gender neutral pronouns are words that refer to a person without specifying the person's gender. They act as alternatives to pronouns like he and she. And people use these words to avoid assuming the gender identity of others if they don't know it. Guessing the gender of others based on their appearance, their clothing, or name may lead to misgendering them. But applying gender-neutral pronouns or referring to them only by their name can prevent this from occurring. Well, we could look at their appearance. Now, the way they dress, not everybody in the LGBTQ community dresses the same way. So how would you know their gender? Or how would you know how they want to be referred as? Because not everybody in the LGBTQ uses the gender neutral pronouns. Some of them still go by he or she. They identify as he and she. Some identify as non-binary. Some are their physical appearance, such as trans. You can see that they are dressing differently and looking differently. Now, so people use these gender neutral pronouns to respect the gender identity of someone when they do know it. For an example, someone who identifies as non-binary, a gender or gender fluid may use them or they pronouns rather than he or him or she or her pronouns. And by adhering to a person's pronouns, you can show sensitivity and respect for their existence. You might consider asking a person what their pronouns are so you can address them correctly. And when and where would you do that? I have no idea. So when might you use a gender neutral pronoun? When you don't know someone's pronouns but still want to refer to them. When you do know someone's pronouns and want to refer to them correctly. When you want to avoid specifying the gender of a person to which you're referring. When you're talking about a human in general. And when you're trying to keep a person's gender anonymous. Well, by using those words that they use, you wouldn't be keeping them anonymous unless you were talking to them in private. Now, I don't know if these words were just made up. So some of the gender neutral pronouns, such as they, is one of the most popular gender neutral pronouns. But some people use neopronouns instead. These new pronouns are words that people have created as alternatives to they, to challenge the idea of a gender binary or male or female and represent their identities accurately. People across cultures have used unique pronouns to refer to themselves and others throughout history. And these common gender neutral pronouns people use, they, them, their. They is the normative plural pronoun of he and she. And it, the phrase they went shopping could indicate that a group of people went shopping together. They can also be the nominative singular pronoun, such as the same phrase, they went shopping. Could indicate that a single person went shopping by themselves. Using they to refer to one person is grammatically correct. You can say they to mention a person of an unknown gender or a person with they, them, their pronouns. There are some examples. I mean, we use that all the time. Now, it's hard, with Bill C-16, and it's like, I ask myself, with the gender pronouns, to put it under the Canadian, Human Rights Commission, or the Ontario Human Rights Commission. We have the Charter Rights and Freedoms, and put the use of these gender pronouns into the criminal laws. People may feel that, oh, geez, if I don't use the correct pronoun for an individual, I could be, subject to a criminal offense. This may not be true. Good morning. Happy Easter to you. I'm your host, Doug, from Ontario, Canada. Whether you're on my show yesterday or not, talking about Bill C-16. It's about gender identity, gender pronouns, how people identify themselves other than, using, a preferred name. And it's probably easier to use the preferred name because people, change their names, in the LGBTQ, Paul may go by the name Paula, for an example. And that person would want you to address them by their chosen name. Others, when it comes to gender pronouns, where did it go now? So that these gender neutral pronouns, because when we refer to people, as gender, it's he or she, him or her, and so on. In the LGBTQ community, they use pronouns such as Z is a common pronoun in the genderqueer non-binary communities, and so Z is a study. So Z is like referring to, well, it could be referring to him. Zer could be him or her. So when we use our pronouns, so the subject pronouns she, the object pronoun is her, the possessive adjectives is her, and the possessive pronouns hers, or the reflective pronouns is herself, right? Such as he, him, his, himself, or they, them, their, theirs, themselves. right? So, and under this heading as is saying, using the pronouns, what people, not everybody in the LGBTQ uses these gender neutral pronouns. So z, them, zer, zers, zerself. It's the same as they, them, their, theirs, themselves. Right? So Bill 16 is, and I have it here, just scroll down here for a second here. Oh, that didn't go far enough. Now, I put it in here. I'll just do a quick search on that because I put it in here. Well, that was the Senate hearing, so it wasn't. I was actually watching that on the video about Bill 16. I don't know if you ever heard of this person. He's a Canadian. He is a clinical psychologist. His name is Jordan Peterson. He's written books. He's a public speaker, professor, and he was really well. He was in the sights of arguing certain points about Bill C-16, and being placed front and center on this topic. And being before the federal committee here in Canada, having a discussion about Bill 16 and how it was written, and where using these gender pronouns, they so under the protection of the law, putting it in the criminal code. So it has sparked a lot of discussion, and try to understand, can someone be brought before the Ontario Human Rights Commission, or brought before the federal courts, if you, I guess it would be going under, like, they put it under hate speech in the law. They put it under section genocide. And I'm asking myself, why is it even in these two sections of the Canadian laws? And then I was asking myself, when and where would I use gender pronouns. So under Bill C-16, the Canada's Gender Identity Rights Bill. So this bill has sparked a national debate. It brought the federal laws up to date with already established provincial human rights codes. So this was passed back in June 2017. So this bill has become a larger conversation surrounding gender pronoun use, freedom of speech, and the rights of transgender and gender diverse Canadians. And so what changes are exactly in this new law? Right? So the bill C-16 added the words gender identity or expression to 3 places. It was added to the Canadian Human Rights Act, joining a list of identifiable groups that are protected from discrimination. And these groups include age, race, sex, religion, and disability, among others. Second, it was added to a section of the criminal code that targets hate speech, defined as advocating genocide and public incitement of hatred, where it joins other identifiable groups. And a third place, it was added to a section of the criminal code dealing with sentencing for hate crimes. If there's evidence that an offense is motivated by laws, prejudice, or hate, and it can be taken into account by the courts during sentencing. So I'm asking myself, how can gender pronouns be put in these 3 different places? If you simply outright refuse to use gender pronouns, is that intimidating? Is that harassment? Does that constitute hate? Does that constitute genocide or public incitement? Does that constitute some sort of discrimination? The pronoun usage. Does the bill legislate the use of certain language? And could someone go to jail for using the wrong pronoun? Or not using them at all, just outright refusing to use the gender pronouns. In the criminal code, which does not reference pronouns, misusing pronouns alone would not constitute a criminal act. The misuse of gender pronouns, without more, cannot rise to the level of a crime. It cannot rise to the level of advocating genocide, inciting hatred, hate speech, or hate crimes. It doesn't meet that threshold. And the Canadian Human Rights Act does not mention pronouns either. The Act protects certain groups from discrimination, just like the Ontario Human Rights Commission does, just like the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms that protects certain groups from discrimination, or anybody from discrimination. Now, would it cover the accidental misuse of pronouns? Very unlikely. Would it cover a situation where an individual repeatedly, consistently refuses to use a person's chosen pronoun? It might. If someone refused to use a preferred pronoun and it was determined to constitute discrimination or harassment, could that potentially result in jail time? It is possible. But, through the process that would start with a complaint and progress to a proceeding before the Human Rights Tribunal. So if the tribunal rules that harassment or discrimination took place, there would be typically be an order for a monetary or a non-monetary remedies. And a non-monetary remedy may include sensitivity training, issuing an apology, or even a public ban. So, I mean, if you're just harassing somebody, because who they are, and they want you to refer to them as a gender pronoun as they refer to themselves, as they identify themselves, and you're doing this on a continuous basis, this could bring you before the tribunal. Harassment. So, since all these changes were brought forth by Bill C-16, and they do not mention pronouns, page 18, gender-based harassment can involve refusing to refer to a person by their self-identified name and proper personal pronoun, right? So, for an example, Paul is now Paula. And they consistently ask you to refer them as their chosen name, and you continually outright refuse, or by their proper personal pronoun as referring to, to Z as reference to he. Now, when I was watching this video of this hearing of this commission, Jordan Peterson, a lawyer, got to speak that day, and it just seemed to be some of the people in the commission leading this commission, it's like that, seemed to be going off track of really what was being discussed here. And what was being discussed here was these gender pronouns. And one of the people in the commission was simply saying, okay, so out of respect, like I said here, to address somebody by their chosen name, wouldn't it just be as easy as doing that? Well, if it's just as easy as doing that, why do we need these pronouns, gender pronouns, now put into the criminal act? So where does this even apply? So the Canadian Human Rights Act is a federal act. Its scope includes the federal government itself, First Nation governments, as well as federally regulated employees such as banks and telecommunication companies, railroad, trucking, airline, so on. Bill C-16 really was just bringing the Federal Human Rights Code into accordance with what has already been protected provincially. So what's already protected provincially now is bringing it into the Federal Human Rights Code. Right? So Bill C-16 addresses most human rights complaints pertaining to the provision of services, accommodations, employment, or the management of public spaces and facilities are made under provincial human rights laws. So the provincial and territorial approaches to gender identity and gender expression. And it's brief summarizes. So the argument here, really by I think by Jordan Peterson, is that simply refusing to use gender pronouns and being subject to, criminally charged or jailed, it's just a really poorly written document. When we already have laws in place, for discrimination, whether, it's hair, it's dress, people, we all don't dress the same, obviously, whether you're part of the LGBTQ or not. Trans may dress differently, wear the way they wear their hair, makeup, clothing, whatever the case may be. You harass, you intimidate, you assault, and that goes for anybody, any gender. You're subject to the full extent of the law. And then I ask myself, when and where would I even use gender pronouns? I was never taught gender pronouns, like as in not like outside of he, her, she, him, in that case, but the other uses of like Z and Zer, when would I ever use that? And they say, when in doubt of somebody's identity, ask the individual, how would you like me to refer to you to address your identity? When am I ever going to do that? People of the LGBTQ, still go by he or she. Or be addressed as him or her. Not everybody in the LGBTQ, agree with Bill C-16. And why, so the three places, where they put it. So why would they put gender pronouns, under the section of the criminal code that targets hate speech? Defined as advocating genocide in public incitement. Why would they put it under the criminal code dealing with sentencing for hate crimes? How is it a hate crime for not using gender pronouns or referring to somebody as their chosen name? That's absolutely ridiculous. And this is the argument that Jordan Peterson is trying to make. Under the, when we look at the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, equality rights, section 15, equality before, under the law, and equal protection and the benefit of the law. Every individual is equal before and under the law and has the right to the equal protection and equal benefit of the law without discrimination, and in particular without discrimination based on race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, age, or mental or physical disabilities. And Section 2 does not prelude any law, program, or activity that has its object of these conditions disadvantaged individuals or groups, including those who are disadvantaged because of race, national, or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, age, or mental or physical disability. And Section 15 of the Charter makes it clear that every individual in Canada, regardless of race, religion, national, or ethnic origin, color, sex, age, or physical or mental ability, is to be treated with the same respect, dignity, and consideration. That means the government must not discriminate on any of these grounds in its laws and programs. So it's already in the Charter. It's already in the Ontario Human Rights Commission. Why is it now, why was it placed in those three places, what I just mentioned to you? It doesn't constitute hate. It doesn't constitute genocide. It doesn't include, it doesn't constitute incitement. Or public incitement. So the courts, have held that Section 15 also protects equality on the basis of other characteristics that are not specifically set out in it. For an example, this section has held to protect or prohibit discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation, marital status, or citizenship. And the Supreme Court of Canada has stated that the purpose of Section 15 is to protect those groups who suffer social, political, and legal disadvantages in society, Discrimination occurs when a person, because of a personal characteristic, suffers disadvantage or is denied opportunities available to other members of society. And at the same time, as it protects equality, the Charter also allows for certain laws and programs that aim to improve the conditions of the disadvantaged individual or groups. Programs aimed at improving employment opportunities for women, indigenous people, visible minorities, or those with mental or physical disabilities are allowed under Section 15(2). So, and earlier when I said too, when I was reading this other article, these lawyers, when it comes to identity pronouns, that they don't, not by not using them and having them under those three sections that I just mentioned to you, it doesn't even meet those thresholds. Now, what can meet those thresholds is basically, if you're going to go out there, you know, you're transphobic, you're homophobic, and you're going out there and you're looking for trouble, and you're intimidating, and you're harassing, and you're assaulting, that could constitute as a hate crime. But simply not using gender pronouns doesn't meet that threshold. Now, like for Jordan Peterson, being a clinical psychologist, a professor, he's being targeted because he turned around and said he's not going to use gender pronouns with his students. Got a lot of backlash about that. So, by putting these things in these sections in the criminal code and stuff like that, compelling somebody to say something or do something, depending on what it is. So we'll stick with the gender pronouns. By compelling somebody to use these, I don't want to get off of this here, but so when it comes to freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, compelling somebody to use gender pronouns, well, I have my freedom of beliefs, I have my freedom of opinion. And, like I said, when would I ever use this? Nowhere. And I'm certainly not going to walk up to a perfect stranger and say, first of all, I have two questions I want to ask you. And the first one is, how would you like me to address you Or what pronoun do you use to identify you? And then ask my second question, when would I ever do that? Never. People, for an example, I mean, let's say, you're going to be doing a speech. You've been invited to talk somewhere, and you're introduced, you're on stage. How are you going to address that crowd after they're done applauding you? You're going to say, thank you, everyone, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Or you're going to say, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That might be a mistake, because you don't know who amongst everybody in that forum may be part of the LGBTQ community and be offended because you said, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It could just be easy as saying, thank you, everyone. Now, and of course, under, like Section 15, Section 2, the Canadians are free to follow the religion of their choice. So there was this article out yesterday, and it targeted the National Hockey League and prominent players of the National Hockey League for Pride Night, wearing commemorative jerseys, in support of the LGBTQ communities. Some players, some teams didn't wear these commemorative jerseys and players. And they're getting backlash out of this from the LGBTQ community. Some members, not all members, but some members. So when it comes to, the fundamental freedoms of Section 2, freedom of thought, they have their freedom of belief. Well, if someone comes up and says, okay, well, you know what? I have my own beliefs, my own Christian beliefs, my own faith, then that has to be respected. Sure, the members of the LGBTQ can be disappointed. And the article went on to say that, okay, well, if these prominent sports players, simply refuse to be involved and wear these commemorative jerseys, or refuse to wear these commemorative jerseys, then there should be a penalty, and it should be a large penalty. Why would someone even say that? When right in the charter, it says that you have the freedom of thought and belief, and in your opinion, in your expression. Oh, because you don't want to wear that commemorative jersey, you should be penalized for that. You don't want to wear the rainbow colors on your sleeve because, oh, you should be penalized for that. And it should be a substantial amount of money. No, I don't think so. It doesn't mean just because, they say, okay, I'm not going to wear this jersey or I'm not going to wear this color on my sleeve. It doesn't mean that they're homophobic. It doesn't mean they're transphobic. They have their own religion beliefs. And that needs to be respected. It's a two-way street here when it comes to respect. It's a two-way street here when it comes to beliefs. Or when it comes to somebody's opinion. Because we all have a right to an opinion. And we can express that opinion. I just found out, I was reading that article, yesterday, and I'm thinking to myself, that's just absolutely absurd that somebody would actually come out and say that, they should be, even like some of the sports figures, and in their statement, we carry no judgment on how people choose to live their lives and believe that all people should be welcome in all aspects of the game of hockey. We feel that by us wearing a Pride jersey, it goes against our Christian beliefs. I didn't silence my phone. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So like I said, so this statement goes on. It's a little bit further down here. So this individual is saying, it makes it quite transparent that the National Hockey League's position of Pride is strictly a marketing position about the Pride and other diversity efforts. These are about marketing the league to a diverse audience that will buy their products, buy their merchandise. And without the National Hockey League actually taking the necessary steps to making the league truly inclusive, this person said. Well, the National Hockey League and hockey leagues all around Canada, is making, it possible for everyone, whether whether it's your race or your ethnic or whatever the case may be, to play the game of hockey. So here's this statement: the National Hockey League should have consequences for players who refuse to participate in the Pride events going forward to show it is serious about promoting diversity. If the teams wanted the players to show up at a Pride night wearing Pride jerseys and made the penalties steep enough, the players would be there. That's a ridiculous statement. And made the penalties steep enough? Why would they be penalized? Penalized for what? You're not going to penalize because somebody has their own beliefs. And they have the right to exercise their beliefs. It's just a ridiculous statement. It actually certainly is. that was in an article that popped up yesterday. I mentioned it in the podcast yesterday as well. So like I say, I mean, whether it's under the Ontario Human Rights Commission, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, um, the federal charters, when it comes to everyone, you know, um, for your rights and stuff like that. Well, and like I said, you know, I don't know anybody um, in the LGBTQ plus two or whatever how they have it written. But anyways, how you're going to identify somebody from the LGBTQ, I don't know, because everybody looks like we don't look the same, but we look male and female. They may not want to be addressed as that. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with anybody being part of the LGBTQ. It's just when you start pushing the limits, having those pronouns in the criminal code, they don't belong there. They're already, for the everything is written, in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Everything is already written in the Ontario Human Rights Commission when it comes to gender and race and sex and so on. It's already there. And this was the argument, from Jordan Peterson, like I said, of it being of these gender neutral pronouns being placed in under the Criminal Code of Canada. Under the three headings that I talked to you about. That was his argument. It didn't change nothing. They've been placed under those three categories that I mentioned to you. It's simply, just because, you refuse to use a gender pronoun, you're not going to go to prison for it. That's just like saying if you don't wear a commemorative jersey on Pride Night, out of respect for the LGBTQ, does that constitute a criminal act? No. Does it constitute penalties or monetary penalties? No. Does it reach the threshold of public incitement? No. Genocide? No. Doesn't reach any of that. It's a poorly written bill. It just simply is. It doesn't. They don't need to be in those sections of the criminal code in Canada. To accommodate, sure, we'll accommodate the LGBTQ, and we're going to put the use of these pronouns under the Criminal Code of Canada, just to make you happy. It's not going to go anywhere. It isn't going to constitute anybody going to prison because they outright refuse to use gender pronouns. People who, like for people who are in positions of teaching, a teacher, a professor, they could be subject to sensitive training. Whereas, that could happen. If you just outright refuse as a teacher or professor to use a gender pronoun that the individual is asked you to do, or use a chosen name that they want you to use, right? Oh, got a question here. Have the truckers got their money back yet? What are you talking about? The so-called Freedom Convoy, Karen Carnival / protest last year? Is that what you're talking about? No, and they're not going to. See, I'll explain. I'll explain something to you. See, during when the GoFundMe campaign was going on, and then it was determined, and also determined by GoFundMe, that there was a act of violence and discrimination and so on, and harassment. They pulled the funding, right? So people got their money back. Same thing was give, send, go. So what happened at the end of the day, the federal government invoked the Federal Emergency Act, which froze all funding, right? There's something like $5 million sitting in escrow, so the courts are holding on to that money because there is a class action lawsuit of something over $350 million class action lawsuit against the organizers of that so-called Freedom Convoy / Karen Carnival. Of like that. So, yeah, no, no, they didn't, and they're not going to. Okay, because, like I said, I have my opinion, everybody has their own opinion, and it's like that. And it was blatantly clear that it became, an occupation and not a protest. And those are two different things, right? An occupation is something that when you hold on to ground and you're refusing to give it up. That's an occupation. A protest is when you're going around and you're holding your signs of what you're protesting about, and then you go home. You don't set up bouncy castles. You don't set up hot tubs. You don't set up stages for acts to come out and see the bearded trucker. That's not a protest. Okay. And you don't use objects such as large vehicles and other sorts of objects to barricade yourselves. Okay. And you don't use large objects such as vehicles and other structures to blockade a major crossing between Canada and the United States or any other infrastructure. That is not a protest. It became apparently illegal very quickly. And when people are walking around and defacing or jumping up and down on the tomb of the unknown soldier and defecating on the war memorial, that's not a protest. Intimidating, harassing, impeding, violating other people's rights is not a protest. So no, they're not getting their money. They're never going to see it. So I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming out this morning. Take your time out here Easter Sunday. Go out and celebrate Easter if that's what you do. And enjoy the day. It is going to be a really nice sunny day today here in Southern Ontario. It's going to be on the mild side. It's going to be nice out there. So people just get out there and enjoy the day with the family, the kids, and have lots of fun. And thank you for, like I said, thank you for coming out this Sunday morning. Back to work tomorrow. I only had Friday off because it was Good Friday. So we'll see what happens. Generally, I do not do a show throughout the week evenings because of my schedule. So hopefully back out on the weekend. Matter of fact, I actually do have next Friday off because I have an appointment that I have to go to. So I will be able to do a show next Friday morning, and I will post that up on Podbean in a little while. So again, go out and enjoy the day, celebrate Easter if that's what you do, and take care, and thank you. Be safe.